decided to make a list of all the cars I had. Me and my roommate were talking about the cars that we've had, and I was like, I want to make a list and see how many I've had. So I made the list, and I'm like, oh, I should post this on Instagram. And in my mind, like, you guys are like my friends, and most of my friends know most of the cars that I've had. So when I realized that a lot of you guys don't know about a lot of the cars that I've had, I was like, oh man, like, this would be something really fun to talk about. And a lot of you were asking a bunch of different questions about, you know, which ones are my favorite, which ones that I wish I didn't get rid of, and about specific cars. So I'm just going to tell you my car history story thing and explain kind of like my favorites and what I learned from trading cars like a madman, like sometimes 4 or 5 times a year. So let's get started with the first car. So the very first car I had was a 1984 Chevrolet El Camino. It was silver bottom and black top, pretty common color for those. It was in pretty good shape. My granddad restored classic cars. He had Corvettes for a while, a lot of Chevrolet stuff, just all sorts of stuff, old Impalas, Corvairs. He got really into El Caminos. So my dad had got this El Camino from him, and my dad's original deal with me and my sister and I when we were younger was that whatever car we wanted, as long as we saved up half, he'd pay the other half. So if I found like a $3,000 car, he'd pay $1,500 of it. Well, he went to do that with my sister. She never paid him back. I never paid insurance, nothing. So he kind of got jaded by that whole experience. And when it came time for me to get a car, he's like, here, you can just drive this El Camino. So it eventually just kind of became mine. So I did get my first car for free, which definitely was a luxury. I will say I haven't had much in life handed to me, but that was like the one thing that I did get. And while I liked it and I thought it was cool, I was a teenager. I wanted something manual. I wanted to like roll through the gears. I wanted to have fun with it. You know, I wanted to be able to go out and speed and take turns and do burnouts, you know, and El Camino would do a burnout. But so I started looking on Craigslist. I posted it for trade for something manual. I almost traded it for like a Dodge Neon, the little 2-door one, manual, just to have a manual car. I wanted one so bad. All I wanted was a manual car. I started looking and I'm just like searching different things, and I remembered 944s. Porsche 944s were cool, and they're pretty cheap. I mean, you could find a pretty clean one for like 3 to 4 grand, like a really clean one. So I stumbled across one for sale. It was about an hour away. And the guy said he was getting too old to get in and out of it. So I hit him up about my El Camino, mint El Camino, blah, blah, blah. So he agreed to meet up. So my dad went with me. We met up with the guy. Car was beautiful, perfect, like red, black interior, not a scratch on it. I mean, it might have had scratches, but it was clean, really clean car. So the guy was kind of hesitant, but you know, I had some money, so I added about $500 on top and got him to trade me. So I had this really clean Porsche 944. It was manual. It was everything I wanted, right? I'm going to be happy now. Like, this is what I want. This is it. Like, we're good now. Well, after a couple months, I got really tired of how slow it was. So I started going on the internet and searching what everyone with a non-turbo 944 searches, how to turbo it. And the answer is you sell it and buy a turbo one, because the turbo ones have better transmissions. They have better brakes. They have a bunch of heat shields that you need in areas to keep things from getting hot. I mean, they're an entirely different car almost. From a drivetrain standpoint. So I'm looking and I meet this guy Elliot, and he has a non-turbo 944 that he was supercharging, and he's like, hey, I was on the forums, he's like, hey, I live in Florida, I think I live close to you, you should come check it out sometime. So I never really hit him up, forgot about it. I ended up back on that forum because I had an issue with my car. It was running like crap, turned out to just be a cracked rotor button. So I was trying to figure it out, and I saw the message and I'm like, man, I should hit this guy up. So the day I'm supposed to go meet up with him, there was like a heavy downpour. I was at school, high school. Me and my girlfriend at the time and my friend were driving home, and the battery box is like in the wiper cowl, and because of the acid it rusts there. Well, right under that is the ECU. So the water, you know, some rust holes, the water poured down and all over the ECU. I pulled the ECU out, it was soaked, like in the parking lot. It died on the exit. Like there's two lanes getting out of the parking lot. It was always packed. It died in one of those lanes. Like super embarrassing. So I leave the car in the parking lot, I get a ride home, and my dad had a Porsche 928, so at the time. So I drove that over to Elliot's, and I meet up with him and I talk to him for a little bit. He's a really cool guy. He shows me all his cars. He has like a couple turbo ones, and so he knew I needed an ECU, so he let me borrow one. I had put mine in rice, he let me borrow one, and I had to bring it back. So mine dried out, mine was good to go, put it back in the car. Drove back, dropped him off the ECU, and that's kind of where our friendship became a friendship. We rode bikes around because he used to BMX and I did a lot back then, and we just kind of became really good friends. And he took me for a ride in his turbo 944, and that was the moment. I remember it vividly. Like, we pulled out into traffic and he just like, you know, kind of jimmied his way through a couple of cars, pinned it, and at that moment I was like, I have to have something turbo, I have to have something fast. Like, I can't do this anymore. I need this in my life. Like, I need this speed, this power. And he drifted it then, and I still wasn't even that interested in drifting. It was just kind of like this thing, and I was like, oh, that was cool, that was crazy, it's so fast. So I got on the hunt for a fast car. I had my car for trade for a while on Craigslist, and I stumbled across this 240, which at the time, Naive Taylor thought this was like a really good deal. So I see this deal and I'm like, oh wow, he's like, it comes with a turbo kit, it comes with a body kit, all this stuff. So I just kind of like went with it. I'm like, all right, you know what? I looked at it, it had coilovers, which I couldn't afford for my car because the cheapest coilovers they make for a 944 are like $1,600. And I just wanted to be able to modify and slam it, and I really wanted to slam it. That was my thing. I wanted to slam my car. And I was working at Steak and Shake at the time, making $7 an hour. I couldn't save up the money to do much to the car. So I go over this 240, I end up trading the dude, I immediately regret it. Like, it was the champagne color with like the brown interior, KA, the turbo was like the complete wrong size, didn't even have a manifold, had some random injectors and a block and like a bunch of stuff I had no idea what to do with that I thought was gonna be a good thing and it was a bad thing. And I was pretty bummed about it, you know. Like, I got rid of this car I really liked because I wanted something fast and with coilovers and I wanted to be able to slam it, and then I kind of realized that it wasn't worth it after I did it. So back to Craigslist I go, and I find a 944 turbo for sale. It's flat blue, it's really ugly flat blue, like it looked like somebody painted it with a crayon. And the guy had done some work to it and he's like, I want to trade for anything not German. So he was over the car at this point, you know, he dealt with a lot of problems. So I hit him up and I'm like, hey man, I've got this 240, you know, I can throw in this turbo kit, kind of the same thing the guy did to me, trying to get this guy to trade. He's like, man, I had one just like it, it got crashed, I want it, like, can you come look at the car? So I'm like, tight, the car's in Orlando, I drive, it was like 30 minutes from me at the time, drive down, check out the car, I test drive it. This is the first time I've ever driven anything fast or turbo. And I just remember like the feeling of like, oh wow, this thing's kind of quick, and then the boost kicking in, I'm like, oh my god, this thing's crazy. And immediately I was like, I have to get this car. So since I had just got this 240, I had to wait for the title to come in. So the guy was cool, he took that off Craigslist, boom, 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 get the title, go back. On the way back, driving it back from trading him, everything is good. Pouring down rain. Never driven this car really more than a few feet. Pouring down rain. So the rain kind of subsides, I'm on I-4, I'm cruising back, I'm in third gear. I put it down into third because I wanted to do a pull. Get on the throttle, immediately get sideways. Somehow I didn't lose it, but that was a scary moment, and I knew the car had a limited slip because my friend Elliot had gone and looked at the car and knew that it had a limited slip. So he basically told me, he's like, look Taylor, you got this turbo Porsche, it's got a limited slip, like you have to drift it, like you have to at least try. And I'm like, oh, I mean, that sounds fun, okay, just don't tell my dad, you know? So we go and we go to a lot, he kind of gives me the basics of how to drift, and that's kind of like where drifting started for me, was that car. It just kind of like happened. I ended up with that car. It had a limited slip, it had everything needed to work. Started drifting it, bone stock. So I had that car for probably a year and a half. I can already tell this is gonna be a long video, but I really wanna, I don't know, this will be cool. For those of you who care, this will be really interesting. So 2 weeks into owning the car, right? I'm driving it, I go to get an oil change. I hadn't done an oil change yet. Go to Advance, get an oil change. I see my friends riding BMX across the street. Drive over there, being a cool kid, you know, I've got my Porsche. And they're like, do a burnout, do a burnout. So I'm like, okay. So rev it up, dump the clutch, loud grinding noise as I do the burnout, right? So I drive away, I drive home. Now every time I get in the throttle hard, grinding noise. Can't figure it out. I'm driving around making it do it over and over again, trying to figure out what it is. I cannot figure it out. So on my way to work, go to leave a stoplight, nothing works, no gear. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, reverse, nothing. So I get the car towed home, get off work after I got off work, and I start inspecting, and basically the transmission's in the rear. There's a shaft, like an input shaft to a transmission that goes all the way to the back, and then one on the trans, and they touch tips basically. And there's a female coupler that slides over and like tightens down, and that's what connects the basically drive shaft to the transmission. Well, I'd stripped the torque tube side. So what you have to do is you have to take the transmission out, you have to drop the whole rear subframe down, take off all the heat shields, the starter, the wastegate, and pull this whole torque tube assembly out. Now, mind you, I hadn't even done like an oil change on my own, let alone this major job. So I had no choice but to dig into it. You know, I had some tools, and I was like, I gotta fix this. I can't afford to pay somebody. I don't have any money. I work at Steak and Shake. So I started tearing into it, and basically you have to slide the coupler over the input shaft to get the trans to drop down, and I'm trying that for like 3 days, long pry bars, whatever. It didn't occur to me that the thread did stripped, the spines did stripped, so it wasn't gonna slide over the input shaft. So I had to bash in my spare tire well, get the trans out. It ended up taking, I think, 2 weeks the first time, and this was me getting off work at 9 o'clock, like high school, work on the car till 4 in the morning, every single night. My friend Daniel was there with me right by my side through most of it, a really good friend. So it was kind of a nightmare. Fortunately, the torque tube was cheap. I think I got one for like $100. So I put that in, started driving the car again, started drifting it. Everything's good. It lasted a few months, then the same thing happened again. Street drifting, same thing happened again. Like shit. Second time it took like 6 hours. Then literally not 2 weeks later, the same thing happened again. And at this point, I'm like, I'm so over this. Like, I'm so tired of doing this. So I fixed it again. So I was driving it. I was driving to a drift event, and this 300X is like trying me on the highway. So me and him kind of get into it, and we're having fun. And my car feels slow. I look down, it's only making 10 pounds of boost. So I try everything I can to figure it out at the event. I don't pay to drive yet because I want to figure out if my car is going to work. Spend all this time trying to get it to work, like just busting my ass. Like, come on, what is it? Like, pinch the wastegate line. Try to just overboost it. It still makes 8 pounds. Like, okay. So pull one of the pipes off. There's metal all in the intake piping. Take the boot off, and the turbo had been ground down. I'll get it. Hold on one second. Okay, so this is what the turbine wheel should look like. So you can see the blades, they curve, they go up. This is the turbo off my Porsche. You can see if it'll focus on it. You can see like where it's like melted, the nuts like melted to the blade here. Basically a bolt from the airbox. The Porsche designed it this way. The bolts are under the air filter. Bolt went down, got sucked in, and just ding 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 against the turbo until it looked like this. So what it should look like, what it looks like. So glad I cut that. So that happened. Changing the turbo sucks. The turbo is bolted to the engine mount, and that is the oil return for the turbo. You have to take the intake manifold off the whole, basically top of the motor besides the head. It's like a V 4-cylinder. The exhaust goes under the oil pan over to the turbo. There's like one bolt you have to like make a wrench to get to. It sucks. It really sucks. It took me like 3 days. There's 2 long Allen bolts that hold it to the engine mount. One's like super long. I stripped that. That was a nightmare. Total pain. Then I'm driving to high school. Cruising to high school. I don't remember what car it was, gets in front of me, and we're kind of like hauling ass off the off ramp. And I kind of take the inside a little too much and dip one tire off onto the lower level of pavement. I think that's what did it. Go to school, go to class. By second period, my friend texts me. He's like, hey man, I think your car is leaking something in the parking lot. Because I had like a senior spot that I parked in. I'm like, dude, this kid doesn't know anything about cars. He's probably full of it. He doesn't know what he's talking about. I walk out there and there's a river of oil. Like every bit of oil that was in my motor was now in the parking lot of high school. So a good buddy of mine had his truck there. He tow straps me home, my buddy Corey. So he just flat tows me all the way home. So then I have to now JB weld the oil pan, because changing the oil pan I think was like 20-something hour job. It was huge. It was a really big job. It was gonna be doing the turbo setup again, basically, because I had to remove that pipe to get the oil pan off and drop the subframe. I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm done. I'm not doing this with this car. I'm so over working on this car. So I JB welded the oil pan. First time it didn't work. Second time really cleaned it up. Took my time. My friend Brandon, he was like, this kid was like 14 at the time, 15, when I was hanging out with him a lot. He was one of my good friends' cousin. And he could weld, he could fabricate. The kid was amazing. Shout out to him, man. He's still killing it. He's still building cool cars. So he helped me get the JB weld done, and we did it at his dad's shop and finished that up. And somebody sent me a link, and it was an E36 turbo for sale. So there was this E36 turbo up in Virginia for sale, and he wanted to train for a 944 turbo. So he thought it had a blown head gasket because he tried all this stuff and it was misfiring. So I'm like, you know what, it's totally worth it, even if it does. Like, I had the M52 with the ZF box. It had a really nice turbo setup, or a pretty nice turbo setup. It had like a Spawn manifold and a decent turbo, but it needed some work, right? But really clean, H&R, suspension, wheels, yada yada. So I hit this guy up and he said, dude, I'm down. I tell him everything, because I'm like, I'm not going to Virginia for him to see some stuff with the car that's wrong and not want it. I told him about the the oil pan being JB welded. I told him about all the issues the car had. He's down. I'm like, all right, cool. This is where things get really interesting. So my friend Daniel, again, the one who helped me do the Porsche stuff when I broke, his dad had a Cummins, Dodge Cummins. I think it was first, not a second gen, but it might have been a 24 valve. I don't know if it was a total 24 valve. Anyway, and a trailer. So I asked him, like, you want to go to Virginia? He was down. So me, him, and his dad drive it to Virginia. And once we get like out of Georgia, the car starts breaking down, starts running like crap. Or not the car, the truck. Like basically what you do is it'd start bogging. You put it in neutral, rev it, and it'd like, you know, like very rough rev and clear up. And then you keep driving. So we're like, we're this far, we're gonna keep going. So then we get into North Carolina, and now it's like shutting down every like 15-20 minutes. We park on the side of the road. Apparently tornadoes went through. It was a disaster zone while we were sleeping on an off ramp. This huge mess. We make it to Virginia. By the time we made it to Virginia, we were stopping every mile and spraying brake cleaner in the intake to get it to fire back up. Get the car, drive out. 2 miles in, we're like, this isn't gonna work. Let's stay the night somewhere. Hopefully it fixes itself and works in the morning. We checked the fuel filter. It was fine. Everything seemed fine. Next morning, we think we're gonna at least make it some distance. Boom, 2 miles in, same shit. So we type in repair shop immediately. Diesel repair shop happens to be right there. We get there. There's a fuel strainer on the truck, or a fuel heater that we didn't know, and there's like a screen on that was completely caked in mud. That's all it was. Fixed that. Drove home at 80 miles an hour. So that was a pretty nightmarish trip. It was one of those moments where I wasn't sure if we were gonna get back. We at least had a running car on the trailer at the time, and then it was, we're getting a car that like runs but probably needs a head gasket. So I get back with this car, and I kind of like look at the coolant, it looks brown. I'm like, okay, it's definitely a blown head gasket, because it broke up like really bad. It ran like shit. So I proceeded to do the head gasket. My graduation present, since I didn't have the money for it, was the head gasket and the head studs. That's what my dad got me for graduating high school. So it took about, I think, like a week or two with machine work and everything. Did the head. Car still ran like crap. Couldn't figure it out. The fuel pump had just fallen off the assembly. It was sucking to the bottom of the tank. That's all it was. It was a fuel pump. Needed a fuel pump the whole time. It never needed to change the head gasket. It just needed a fuel pump. But it was an upgraded head gasket, so it was worth doing. So I drive this car for like, I think I registered it. I drove it around without a tag, got pulled over. I didn't know that was like as illegal as it was. That's a big deal. Don't do that in Florida. So let's see. So I'm driving this car for a little while, and I'm just, at this point I'm like, I'm in it, you know, like I've kind of, the trades have kind of been going up and up. So at this point I'm like, man, what else can I get? Like, this is a clean car. I'm sure I can get something cool for this. So I'm on Zilvia, I'm on the for sale threads, and then I see this guy selling, he wants to trade everything for one nice car. He has S13 coupe with a KA. It has like this cool paint job and Mustang wheels, a 4-point cage, and Recaro Evo seats, and like a decently done 240. He had a freshly rebuilt RB20 full swap to go in it. Like, he had the mounts, the clutch kit, everything, and the motor was freshly rebuilt. And a Datsun 280Z with an RB25 and like these 16 by 9.5 Epsilon Southern Waves with like 4-inch lips. So the dude's like 4 hours away, and mind you, this is like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I think it's probably a month total actually, after this catastrophic trip to Virginia. And I'm like, yo, Daniel, do you want to go down to Naples now? And he's like, I hate you so much. I hate you. He didn't want to do it, but he did it. And we drove down there. We were supposed to leave, I think, at noon. We ended up leaving it to go down there like 10 at night. We didn't get there until I think like 4 or 5 in the morning. About, I think, 3 in the morning. I drove straight back and went to a drug test for my new job at like 8:30 in the morning, because I just got a job at Advanced Auto Parts from Steak and Shake, so I was moving up in the world. 240 drove all the way back. They trailered the Datsun back. So my stepmom hated me. She sucked. She was just a terrible person. She hated cars. I wasn't allowed to keep the Datsun at the house, so I had to rent a storage unit. Now $100 a month isn't a lot, but it's a lot when you're making, you know, $7 an hour. So put the Datsun in a storage unit, and mind you, at this point my mechanical skill set is still not that good. Like, I've worked on cars, but I'm really not, like, I'm not super knowledgeable. I haven't worked on a ton of cars. I don't know anywhere near as much as I needed to know to start tackling the Datsun project. It had a lot of rust. It needed like a new motor mount kit put in. It just needed a lot of stuff. It ran, but it didn't drive. So I had that in the storage unit. I had the 240. The 240 had a stock KA in it. I did one event with it with a stock KA. I hit the wall with it in the front. I just, like, I had never had an e-brake in the Porsche. I learned without one. so I didn't really have the timing of like e-brake and clutch down. So as soon as I pushed the clutch in before I pulled the e-brake, car pitched, boom, hit the wall at the front. And then shortly after that, it was time to swap the RB20 in. And I didn't have enough knowledge then to do it. So my friend John was like, hey, if you give me the KA out of your car, I'll put the RB20 in. And I wasn't allowed to do it at my house in the first place, so I was like kind of in a pinch. I'm like, okay. So he does the swap, we get the car running, the car runs great, bone stock RB20, and I drifted like that for a while, no power steering. And then my friend Brandon again helped me. We like modded a KA power steering pump to work and finally got it working. It was kind of a nightmare, and I had power steering and the car was great. Like the car never had a problem, never skipped a beat. Like drove to the event, drifted all night, drove home. I loved it. I loved the car. No angle mods or anything, no coilovers. I think it just had like lowering springs and KYB shocks or something. So the car's like that for a while. I'm driving these events and I'm driving to my friend Grafton's housewarming party. I'm cruising down the highway on I-40 like 65 because at like 75 the thing would shake all over the place. I hear a noise, look over, I see headlights. This girl, boom, pit maneuvers me like straight up, pit maneuver, 360 into the ditch in the middle, like hit a traffic cone. Car stalls, she parks, she like takes off for a second, then stops and gets out and destroyed the whole rear quarter. And the funny part is she ends up over on the side of the road with me before anybody gets there. So the road ranger gets there and he's like prying it out. I'm like, hey man, calm down, you know, like, because I didn't want him to mess it up anymore or less. He's like, oh, don't worry, man, like, she hit you, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, oh yeah, she's screwed. She's the one who's gonna have to deal with all this, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, dude, don't make her feel bad. And he's like, oh my God, I thought that was your girlfriend. Like, the girl standing next to me was the girl who hit me. And he thought she was my girlfriend because we were like the same age. It was hilarious. So I got a decent insurance check for the car. I think I got like $1,900 or something for the damage. So I had to not write it up totaled. So I keep driving the car at an event, and this is my first big wreck. It was when I got overconfident, and I said, last run, tires were done, and there was 3 walls at CFRC, and I'd get really close to the first wall, really close to the second wall, and I would tap the third one. But this time, I just smashed into the third one with the rear. Front wheels went up, car went in the air, landed backwards. Like, it was pretty bad. It was a pretty bad crash. The car was still drivable, drove for 2 weeks like that. I came across this deal. My friend was selling a Cage KATS14 with body kit and stuff, and I was like, this is perfect. This is what I want. I can tandem now because I could never afford a Cage. So I buy that car and I started daily driving this car, and I'm talking a Cage, like an external fuel pump, like an Air Motivate 1000, and it was loud, it was hot, it was in the summer. I was driving 30 minutes to work from my apartment that I was living at with my friend. I'm like 19 at this point, just for age reference. So I drove it for a while, and I'm like, man, I can't do this anymore. I did like 1 competition in it, and that was it. So I'm done. It was just not a good daily driver by any means. So this kid wanted to buy it from me. He bought it from me. I bought a street bike. So I had a street bike in the Dodson. Started riding the street bike. I sold the street bike. And I was like another street bike. So I got the first one was a Gixxer 600. Second was a CBR 954RR. And that's what I was riding, and I had the Datsun. So this dude comes up with a trade for like this slammed LS400 on wheels and an E30 convertible that's got like the 2.7 stroker and coilovers, and it seemed like a great deal, right? So I talked to the guy for a while. Finally, I'm like, all right, I'm down to do this trade, trading the Datsun for these 2 cars because it would make more sense. Now I'd have a bike, a daily, and a drift car. I was like, this is perfect. So I used like the last money I have to pay my friend's gas to tow the Datsun down to Sarasota. I get there, and we get to where I'm dropping the Datsun off, and it's the E30, and it's like way worse than I thought. And I'm like, well, you know, I'm sure the LS will make up for it. It looks super clean. You know, we'll go ahead and do it. Like, this is fine. Put the E30 on the tow dolly, go over to get the LS400, complete pile of shit. Running on 6 cylinders, like uncut springs. It was terrible, complete piece of shit worth maybe $500, $1,000. So at that point where I knew up, you know, like I knew I've made a big mistake. And I was too far in to turn around. I should have just turned around. If you can take any lesson from this entire ramble talk that I'm giving you, if a deal's bad, walk away. Even if you're wasting gas money, it's better than buying a car and losing a lot of money, time, and effort on it. Walk away. I should have walked away. I didn't. The car had like $2,000 wheels on it, Epsilons. They needed to be refinished, but they were really nice. The RB25 started and ran perfect. I was a complete moron in that moment for getting rid of that car for these 2 pieces of junk. I think I sold one for $800 and the other one was basically a wash. So that'll segue us into the next part of this story. So then I take the LS400 and I trade it for a built standalone SR, built SR was 240 standalone suspension, all the goodies, right? Is this focus on my face? So I trade for that. I give him 3,200 on top because I just sold my street bike, I think. So I had this 240. Everything's good, but it has the tune's bad. It runs like crap, like past like half throttle. Couldn't find anybody to tune it. Took it to a couple people and they couldn't figure it out. So there was this guy in Atlanta with an SR 886. It had like a Cusco built-in cage. It had all the T3 suspension stuff. So me and him talked for a while and he's interested, he's down. So me and my friend Mark drive the car up to Atlanta, trade the guy at like midnight, drive back. I mean, it's like 8 hours each way. Get back in the morning, he has to go to work, I have to go to work in the morning. So now I've got this SR 886. It was a GTS coupe. So it was a really cool car. It had some dinky wheels on it. If I had just put wheels on the car, I don't think I ever would have got rid of it. But it just looked horrible on those wheels. I didn't have the money for wheels. This is a common theme and why I traded cars so much, because I never had the money to mod my cars at that time. So I would just trade for some, like, if I had this car and I wanted to put this in it, but this car had this but it was a little worse, I would just trade. It was kind of a mess. This is where things started going downhill for me. It was like all up trades, and now it's like we're gonna taper off. We're gonna crash and burn at this point. So I was 886 for a while, all good and well, and I have this bike again. I got a 954, the 954. I guess I did still have the 954. So I end up trading the 954 for a turbo Miata, white turbo Miata, RPF ones, hard top, like really cool car. And I had that in the 86 for a while, and then I'm like, man, neither of these are great drift cars. If I sell one and build the other, they're still not gonna make great drift cars. I'm gonna sell them both and buy like one drift car. Like that was my plan. So I sell the Miata for pretty good money. I can't sell the 86. No one wants it. The turbo is leaking because I changed the turbo gasket, and then I forgot to put the wastegate line on it. Like over boosted the hell out of it, and it's smoking. So finally I find this guy to trade me like a Gixxer 750 like race bike for the 86, and I was just at the point where I was so over the car I was gonna take whatever. Also, don't do that. Know what your car is worth and don't take whatever just because you want to get rid of it and you've convinced yourself you need to. Terrible idea. I fully regret it. So I traded for this Gixxer 750. I ended up selling that for I think like 3,200 bucks or something down the road. So I sold a really nice SR 886 for 3,200 bucks at the end of the day is what it boils down to. But it's because I wanted a bike. I mean, I messed up. So at this point, I'm at like zero vehicles, and I think I have like $7 grand to spend. So I'm looking. I can't find anything worthwhile, any 240 worthwhile, and I need one like right then and there. I'm like bumming rides at this point because I don't have a car. So I come across this one, which is a whole story in of itself that I'm not going to get into. But it's got an RB25. It's got a big turbo. The turbo is way too big. The rear quarter had been smashed and pulled out, but it like looked okay, and I ended up picking it up. It had like coilovers, it had like a lot of the basic stuff, and then this kind of became my drift car for a while. I thought it had rod knock, it didn't, but I thought it had rod knock, so I went out and bought like a $1,500 Ford Ranger as a daily, and I would just switch the tag back and forth between the two. And I started building this car for a while. I actually have a build there, which I'll link below if you guys are curious about this car. But it went through a lot of changes. I mean, it had the RB. I put a smaller turbo on it, just an eBay ball bearing, 30R basically. I put, you know, the bride seat out of the 886 in it because I'd kept that. I put, we like took this cage that had been cut out of a car, put in another car, and then cut out of that car and put it in my car. It was super ghetto. Should have never done it. I duct taped it so you couldn't see the welds. It was bad. Very, very dangerous, very young Taylor, not caring, just wanted the tandem. And we did this all overnight. Like we swapped a stock RB20 turbo on it. We put the cage in, gutted the interior all in one night, finished at 5 in the morning, and then went to adjust it the next day, which was aftermath after one of the FDs, I think in West Palm Bay, whatever. All the FD drivers came up to Orlando CFRC and drove, and I wanted to drive with them, so I needed the cage. So after that, the RB20 turbo kind of sucked. Got the other turbo that I was telling you about. So we put that on. The car is like getting better. It's still not great. I get over fenders for the rear to get rid of the terrible cellulite like rear quarter panels. Rear wheel spacers. Grafton mods my knuckles. We did that at PSI. And And the car's like decent. I get a steering wheel set up. Like, this is the first car I really put a lot of money and time into modifying. And then it just kept giving me issues. Like, I did one event and the freaking wastegate dump tube fell off. And then I did another event and the car just started running like crap on the first day. Like, it just ran terrible. Like, out of nowhere, ran terrible. I retuned the whole car with the SAFC, nothing. Went home, got my other car, bought parts, like fuel pump, fuel filter, a bunch of stuff. Redid the wiring to the fuel pump, got it to run right again. So I'm like, sweet, you know, this is a 2-day event. It was a Black Friday event. So I'm like, tight, we're good to go. Let's do this. And go to drive again, boom, transmission gets stuck in second gear. Like, will not come out of second gear. We tried everything we could. Go to get a tow home, all of a sudden second gear works again. It comes in and out of second gear. My friend tows me home. I parked the car and I'm like, this is it. I'm done with this RB25. I'm pulling it out and I'm putting an LS in it. That's what I'm doing. I'm sticking to it. I'm done. So I pull the RB25 out. I try to sell the whole swap, you know, radiator to like drive shaft. Nobody wants to buy it. This guy offers me a Volkswagen Mark IV GTI VR6. So I was like, I can just get it and sell the car. So I trade him. So I have that and I have my G20 and my shell. I had bought it. I traded. Oh, I bought an R6 at some point in this story. And no, I traded my Ranger plus cash for an R6. I had the R6 for a while, then I traded that for a G20. So that's where we're at there. So I got the G20, got the GTI. I was like, which one do I want to keep? I'm like, whichever one sells first, I'll sell and I'll keep the other one. So the G20 sold first, had the GTI in my shell. I had the money, and I'm like, okay, looking on Craigslist, and I find this built 2.2 SR, cams, AM standalones, Spitfire coils, like good clutch setup, like full drop in for $3 grand. I'm like, okay, we're gonna do it. We're just gonna do it. I had the Greddy pan, like full built SR. So go there and the guy's like, oh no, I want that for the long block. And I'm like, all right, dude, well, I'm walking away. You know, I can't do it. He agreed to sell me everything for that much. I take it and I swap the motor into the car. And then at this point, I'm like, I really want to make this nice. So I paint the engine bay, redo the wiring behind the dash. I kind of put some in the interior back in, cut the cage out because the cage was so ghetto. And like, I'm really going towards trying to make this car nice at this point. So it gets to a point where a wife hits. My stepmom hated me. She didn't want me to leave the house, so she convinced my dad to kick me out of the house. I had to get a full-time job, and I started working construction like 60, 70 hours a week. And got my own place. I got an apartment. The car was at my girlfriend at the time's house, and I just like didn't work on it. Like, it didn't have the money. It needed like another $3,000 worth of stuff to really be driftable. I didn't have the money, so it just sat and sat and sat and sat. I was driving this GTI at the time, which is a complete piece of junk. It had 90,000 miles and was like the shittiest car I've owned. Marco called me and I lost place of where I was at. Oh, GTI. So 90,000 miles, biggest piece of junk I've ever owned, right? Like, the seats had fallen apart. When I got it, both the windows worked, but only from the key on the outside. That's the only way they'd roll down. I changed the switch, didn't do anything. And the key, where you lock it, you could just pull that whole cylinder out and stick your finger in there, and that's how you did it, because the key wouldn't turn it. It's a piece of junk. It looked clean, but it was a piece of junk. So I ended up trading that for a kooky S14. That was an even worse piece of junk. I just wanted another rear-wheel drive car that I could drift in the meantime while I was building this other one, because I still have my SR22 car just kind of sitting there. So I traded for this kooky S14, complete pile. If I had more motivation then, I probably could have made it decent, but I didn't. So I sold the kooky front, put my Zenki front on it, off my SR22, and then I traded it for like a Honda Civic 4-door that had working AC, which quit on me like a week later. So that was like pretty much a low. Like, the 4-door Civic was pretty reliable. It was pretty ugly. It was like had 17s or something on it. It was like flat green, had like zombie response team. It was pretty bad, but it worked as a daily for the time. So I eventually sold that, and no. So I had that, and then I posted the 240 for sale that I built for 2 years. I was like, I can't afford this. I don't have time to work on it. I don't have the money. So I decided to sell it. I get pretty decent money for it considering it didn't drive. It would run, and you'd have to turn the fuel pump on and off to keep it running, and you could drive it, but like, it ran like shit. So I traded to these guys. They like crashed it getting it onto the trailer. It was a whole funny mess. They came from Texas to get the car, actually. So then I have some money, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna buy a nice car that I can drift a little bit. So I buy a G35 sedan, 6-speed. It's decent. I go buy coilers for it, put coilers on it, buy wheels for it. Never put them on. I bought some wheels. I didn't have time. Before I put them on, I'm like, I hate this. I had the car for like a month, and I'm like, this is so boring. Like, it's a nice car, and it's cool to drive around, but I can't, like, I can drift it a little bit, but not really. Like, I want a drift car. No, that's not what happened. Sorry. So, I was planning on moving to Oregon with this girl I was with. Good thing I didn't, because that relationship ended shortly thereafter. And so I sold the G, and I bought a car from a friend through an auction that was cheap that I could resell. I bought a Prelude with like these 18-inch chrome rims on it, and I was daily driving that for a while. And then after a while, I was like, man, like, I'm itching, I got the money, I want to buy something else. So I find this built SR 240 standalone, yada yada. The guy had taken the turbo setup off. It had like S14 T28. Taking that off to build a big 30R and build a manifold, blah 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 blah. Had suspension, wheels, like pretty good car, pretty good base. Needed paint, needed me to finish it up, but it was like there. So I buy this car, I put the turbo setup back on, and I get it running, and I'm trying to learn how to tune. I'm like driving around trying to tune it. It was at my ex's house, again, same spot. Driving it around, no tag, obviously, just like around the block, trying to get it tuned. One day I hear grinding noise as I'm like accelerating. Slow down, stop the car. I'm like, that was weird. Started back up, same noise, like just like it sounds like metal on metal. Sounds coming from the valve cover area. Turn the car off, take the valve cover off, look, and the upper timing chain guide has like fallen on the chain and it's just sitting there on the chain. So I'm like, oh, that's the noise. That's the problem. The dude only put one bolt in here. What an idiot. Like, why would he only put one bolt when there's two? Well, no. The other bolt had fallen out, fallen down into the crankcase, and what happened was when I went to start it after that, because I put the Velcro back on and everything, went to start it, boom, that bolt locked up the chain, which then caused me to break every single exhaust valve. I think all of the exhaust rocker arms, punch a hole in one of the pistons. Well, it put a big dent in it that cracked all the way through, like trashed the motor basically. So then I pull the motor out, take it apart, buy one piston for it. Then it takes me like a year and a half to rebuild it. Don't have time. So still without a drift car this whole time. So I'm rebuilding it. Me and this girl in our relationship, I end up rebuilding on the back porch of my friend Andrew's house. Like, finally get the car running again. And at this point, I still have the Prelude. So I finally get the car running again, and I'm trying to get it tuned. I go to this place to tune it. They can't figure it out again. Like, again. And like, what is it with me and standalones that people can't figure out how to tune my particular cars? So I get the tune like worked out. Like I'm figuring out the fuel. I get the fuel at least pretty dialed. I'm driving the car. I end up with another girl. I blow the turbo. I put a 2871 on it, and then move out from there. And when I moved into this house here, the very day I moved into this house, I borrowed a friend's truck, and I left the 240 at his house because I drove it down first with a lot of my stuff. I had, oh shit, hold on, 2 steps back. So Prelude, I traded the Prelude for a Ford Ranger Edge. Pretty nice. It had been plasticated black. Drive it for a while, and then I find a Miata for trade, 1.8 hardtop, really clean. The motor was freshly swapped in because I guess the other one had crankwalk issues, lower mileage, had coilovers. It was a really nice car, and the dude wanted to trade me to get something for his mom. So he's like, if you peel the plastic dip off and the paint's good underneath, like, I'll trade you. I'm like, shit, like, I don't know if the paint's good underneath. So I just did it, peel the plastic dip off, paint's perfect underneath. We trade, boom, boom, boom. Now I've got this Miata. So I've got the 240 in the Miata. Move in here, bring my stuff down in the 240, take the 240 over to my friend's house, borrow his truck, go get my furniture, have my roommate fed, drive my Miata back here. We get here, we unload. I go back to my friend's house. He's like, hey man, you let me drive your car? I'm like, dude, go for it, have fun. So after a little while, he doesn't come back. We're like, this is weird. Like, I don't really know why he's not back yet. So his girlfriend comes out and she's like, hey, he just crashed your car. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? She's like, I'm not kidding. I'm like, she's kidding. Like, he's gotta be kidding. So I call him and he answers the phone, sounds normal, and then he passes the phone. He's like, he had his friend with him, and I'm like, he passes his phone. The guy's like, oh, I'm from the fire department, blah blah blah. Your friend's got a broken leg, and I'm like, there's no way. There's just no way. There's no way. So then his girlfriend comes back. She takes me to the car. The car is totaled into a tree. Like, I don't know how he lived through this accident. Like, it was really bad. Smashed the whole, it was bad. Really, really, really bad wreck. So me and my roommate started ripping parts off because I don't know what's going to happen to the car. So rip the parts off. I end up getting the car back. The insurance wouldn't cover anything on the car because I just had, you know, personal injury protection. So I get the car back. I part that car out. He gives me Like I tell him how much I'm going to get in parts for it, and then how much I would have sold it for, and he gave me the difference. So he totally made it right. No big deal. The car was kind of cursed anyway. I wanted to get rid of it, so it wasn't the end of the world. But he did end up with a shattered pelvis, which I feel bad for him. That sucks. So now that car's gone. I have the Miata, and I have some money. So I end up buying a Grom, and I buy a Ford Bronco, which needs a new motor, which I didn't realize. It just didn't run. So me and my friends put a new motor in. That's kind of when me, John, and Marco became like really good pals. Crazy fun night, pulling the motor, yada yada. Put another motor in it. That motor's locked up. We went and bought this motor from these rednecks and like put it in the trunk of John's car, and it just ended up being locked up. So we're like, son of a bee, this sucks. So I sell that. Damn, now I gotta figure out where I'm at. This is the most recent, but I don't, let's see. Okay, so then I think I sold my Grom. Maybe? I think that's what happened. I sold my Grom at some point. I made like 200 bucks on it after I beat the crap out of it. It was pretty awesome. And I got a Lexus SC300, which came with a bunch of wheels and was already on coilovers, had a seat, had a steering wheel setup. I drifted it twice. I drifted it at the compound, and I drifted it at OSW, which is like my second YouTube video ever is that car. And I had a 1J for it that I was going to swap into it, and it just like, I didn't have any motivation at the time. Like, this is back when I was just hanging out and we were all drinking a lot, and I had no motivation. And let me tell you, quitting drinking is probably the best thing I could have ever done as far as working on cars and getting stuff done. You know, back then I just had no motivation to do stuff, you know, like it would just be, oh yeah, we'll just hang out and drink, you know, and I wouldn't do anything. I wouldn't get anything done. So I'm really glad I quit, because now all I do is work on cars because I don't drink. So it's better to be productive. Trust me, don't ever go the route of drinking. When you turn 21, if you're not 21 yet, just don't bother. Waste of time. Trust me, waste of time. So yeah, I didn't have any motivation to work on it. I ended up selling that, and then I bought, because it was like a big heavy car, control arms were expensive, and needed a lot to be really good, and I wasn't gonna have the money to do that. So I got rid of it and had some money, and I bought a 240 cage shell that like didn't even have subframes. And I was going to build this LS car on the cheap because the shell was already caged, had been crashed in the rear quarter, but it was fixable. So I had that car for a while, never touched it, never did anything to it, sold it for the same money I bought it for. What else? I think maybe before that, I don't remember. I bought a G35 sedan, 6-speed manual for like 2,300 bucks. Got it home and it was just pretty clapped out, and no one wanted to buy the motor, and it was just another big project that I didn't want to get involved in. I wanted to LS swap it, but then I realized that like I had just enough money on paper to do it, which means I would have nowhere near enough money to do it. So I sold that. And then what else? That was like one of the few cars I've lost money on, like that and the 86 and the Datsun. Normally I've made money on all these cars, which has afforded me to buy bigger and better cars by trading. The key to trading is you got to find somebody who wants what you have more than you want what they have. So like, let's say somebody has a kid and they need to get rid of their 240 and they need a daily driver. I can trade my G20 for like a $3,000 240 if someone really needs it, and mine trades the trade that comes along. So that's kind of how up trading works. Never trade with passion. Never trade your nice car for something worth less just because you want it, because it'll never last. Just trust me. So I sell the G35 and I buy the E30 with the SR in it from a friend of mine. And he swore the motor was good. He swore everything was good about the car. I get it home and try to get it running. I fix some wiring, get the car running. I actually have some videos of that. That was going to be my first YouTube video. We got it running, kind of ran like crap. It was terrible. I never made that video. So I finally got around to compression testing it, which was then going to be my first video. Compression was absolutely terrible. I don't know if I put that in the video or not. I don't remember. I'm going to put these clips in later. So I ended up selling it for like $1,000. I kept the wheels, which are the ones that used to be on the Miata, the Cosmos wheels. And I told my buddies, like, hey, I'll hook you up with, I'll pay for your car to get caged or something to make up the difference in money you lost. Because I basically lost like $1,000 out of the deal. Still hasn't happened yet, but hopefully with the Corvette, that's gonna get that free cage. That's why I'm owed a cage. Okay, so at some point in the midst of those cars, I'm not sure where, I wanted a tow rig as a daily. Just because I wanted to be able to tow my car. I was going to get a trailer. I had this whole plan to be like John and Keegan and Marco and have like a truck and trailer and a dedicated drift car, which now I don't even want anymore. I just want like what I have, like a daily drifter caged fun car that I don't have the trailer. But anyway, that's not this discussion. So I was looking for Ford Broncos because my roommate had one. I really liked it, and I found a Centurion. Now what a Centurion is it was a company that took models directly from Ford, and basically they made a 4-door Bronco with F350 axles and drivetrain. So I showed it to my roommate, and he's like, oh no, it's a bad deal, whatever. It was really that he wanted it, and he was trying to buy it out from underneath me. Kind of hilarious. I ended up having the money, I bought it, and we were planning on me selling it to him. So I basically like sold it to him what I bought it for what I bought it for, and then he sold me his Bronco for what he bought it for, because he got like a really good deal on it. I got a really good deal. It worked on the end. He made a lot of money on that thing, actually. I should have kept it, but yeah, who cares? I wanted to help him out. He really wanted it, so let's see. So then I had a regular Bronco, which I had for a while, as you can see in my, like, I think my very first video. I'm driving it around talking. I really liked it, but it got terrible gas mileage. I wanted something else, so I ended up selling it, and I just had the Miata, and that's when I blew the Miata motor up, as you guys may remember, the first time. So then I had to buy it daily, so I went and bought this G20, which I was going to make a video of, but half the clips didn't record. And then I've been dailying that for a while and had the Miata, and then what did we get after that? And this Miata, you guys know the story. If you've seen Adam's video of us trying to buy his girlfriend a Miata, basically, we were going to buy Nicole a Miata, and then the one we looked at sucked, so I was looking at cars for me to buy while we were down there, because we already had the cash out, and I just stumbled across this one, and I had just enough money to buy it, so I ended up buying this one just because it was a good deal. I had no intentions of buying a Miata. I wanted to buy a 240, and this one just happened to be a really good deal, and I bought it. Not planned at all. So then I got the Jag, which you guys know of, which is still no progress yet, soon. And then the Corvette. I think that's it. I think we're caught up. Wow, that was, my throat hurts. That's how long that story was. So to question time. If I could keep, what would I rate my top 3? The camo coupe, blue RB20 coupe was my favorite, just because it worked. It was a cool looking car. Everyone remembered me by that car. I loved it. It was super fun to drift. It did well, and it just worked. I never had to fix that car. Like, pretty much just worked all the time. Never had a single issue, really. After that, let's see, what's my second favorite? I think second and third would be the Corvette and the Miata. I don't know in which order yet, but I love the Corvette and I love the Miata. I'm really gonna miss the Miata. I don't know if you guys can see it. It's right over there. I love both of them, so that's kind of, I should have been talking to this thing that's like this whole time, but you can see in the background, I think. It looks pretty too. Oh, not well lit though. Yeah, so I think those would be my top 3. I definitely missed the Bronco. I missed the 886. Okay, cars I missed and shouldn't have gotten rid of: the Datsun 280Z, the 886 with the SR, and the 240 with the built SR that had the bad tune. The first one with the bad tune that I told you guys about, that I traded LS 400 plus cash for. That was a really, really dialed car. I should have just saved up the money and fixed it somehow. That was a really, really clean, really, really nice, really well put together car. I messed up on that one. So I messed up on that one, the 886, and the Datsun. Probably the biggest time would be the Datsun, second 886, third would be that car. I miss the Datsun, man. Those wheels are amazing. I don't want to talk about it. I realized, like, after I got rid of it, what I could have done instead of what I did, you know, because instead of like selling this and buying this and whatever, I could have like taken the wheels and the motor out of that and like put it in this other shell and like sold this and whatever. Like, I don't want to talk about it. It still makes me sad to this day. I could have had like an RB25 coupe on like 15 or 16 by 9.5. It's like cool, like the small wheel style coupe. Sorry, I'm daydreaming now. I really regret that little whole situation though. I messed up when I bought the caged S14 and got rid of the coupe, the blue camo coupe. Like, I should have kept that as the muscle car and done what I just said, like sold the 280Z shell and take the motor and the wheels from that and made like a cool 240 daily. I would have had a 240 missile and a 240 daily. I messed up. But here we are now. This is where we're at. So the Miata's gonna go, the G20's gonna go, and we are gonna have the Jag and the Corvette. So that's where we are now. I am still raffling the Miata. That's definitely still planned. I want to get everything sorted before then, and I've been super busy working on cars. filming videos and editing videos and haven't had time to sit down and really plan everything out as far as the raffle goes. But if you guys made it all the way through this video, you're pretty freaking awesome. I gotta say, you stuck with me through my whole story. It's cool that I got to finally tell you guys my car history. Yeah, and somebody asked how much I like the Porsche. I really like the turbo Porsche. I missed that car a lot. I just hated working on it. It was a really cool car, really fun to drive, very good quality, like the way the car felt, but working on it sucked. So anyway, with that, thank you guys for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you next time. Tomorrow, another day.
This is a very
Bye,
little
guys.
production.